Hello, Jeffrey.
Hey, Dor. You sound. That wasn't your normal hello, Jeffrey. I was a little disgruntled. What's going on?
I'm in the middle of a Instagram argument with someone.
Let me guess the subject matter.
Yes, they're telling me Hamas is a contentious organization. They believe in two-state solution and are not going after Jews, just Zionists. Oh, I can't handle it. It's just.
It sounds like you're having a Twitter argument with someone who's in Hamas. My name's Jeff. I'm calling in from California.
My name's Dor, and I'm joining you from London.
Out of 16 million, we are two.
Two freaked out Jews. They just don't get it. These people, they live in in the West. They think this is, the Middle East is exactly like Europe. It's all logical. It's not a religious conflict. They just, yeah. Anyway, I'm frustrated.
Who is this, like someone you work with or someone you know? Or just a random person?
No, it's someone I knew from university. But anyway, I'm frustrated. I'll deal with it later because you interrupted me.
Oh, sorry. I know how it is. I know. Everyone can relate with you, Dor. I go on Twitter nowadays, seldomly, because it's such a terrible, terrible website. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like, when you smell something that's kind of stinky, but it's like kind of like you just got to keep smelling it because it's kind of a good stink, even though it's a gross stink. You know what I'm talking about? That's what Twitter's like.
Only you.
And
yeah.
I go in there and I just feel like this is disgusting, but I'm looking around and every comment is just the worst people acting their worst. And I read something that annoys me, like you just said, and then I'll just like type out this answer. Often I won't even send it. I'll like, okay, just calm down. Don't even send it. Sometimes I will send it, and then I never even, it's just I have a troll account. It's not even from my name. It's just like I go in there to dip my toe into the dirty pool of stinkiness.
I'll explain why I'm doing this, people would tell me, why'd you bother with these people? Partially, I like to know what the opinion is because I think you need to know what is out there and not just stay in your own bubble because we have to fight this, right? So partly I engage because I want to know what they're thinking, as misguided as it is, and to think about how we can combat it because it's a big problem.
All this trolling and terribleness and the awful news from last week and all this like torment. I'm on like break right now, vacation from work, and I think I've subconsciously given myself a break from the torment of this conflict. That classic diaspora privilege we have to do.
Sure, I just like to acknowledge that you mentioned the. So some people have not heard our discussion about sort of the privilege of being in the diaspora, which is right. You do feel alone because you're obviously surrounded by lots of people that don't understand what's going on in Israel, as the argument with my Instagram person showcases. But what we do have a privilege in the diaspora is we can disconnect more easily. Well, I speak to my family in Israel and friends, and they're just constantly, you can even over the phone, you can understand the depression that's going on because, you have, just this weekend, you had more than 10 soldiers died.
No, let's turn off. No, Dor. Let's move away. Okay. See what just happened there? It's so easy to dip back into it. But I just remember when we were in the army, we would talk about...
Side piece, Jeff. You probably should not say, no, let's move away. There's privilege, and then there's ignoring and dismissing.
Yeah.
No,
I redacted from the record. I'm not cutting it out, but I'll redact it. That was wrong to say, and I agree with you. Okay. Anyway, so Dor, we spent countless hours, countless nights in the army, and we talked about everything under the sun. I think, you told me about your travels and your friends. I told you about my family. We've had countless conversations. I don't think this is a conversation we've ever had. And I'm just curious because you're such a different type of person than me. I just want to hear what you think about spirituality. This is two freaked out Jews, and part of that is being Jewish. I know we're both secular, but I'm curious to know, if you ever go deep and just think about what it all means.
You mean Judaism?
Life, Dor.
God.
I'm serious. No, I'm serious. I want to know how hard you think about this stuff, and how does Judaism tie into it? But like, does it tie into it? I know you're secular. I know that I'm secular. I know you don't want to talk about this. It's not, but I'm just live go. Like, what do you ever think about it?
It's not that I don't want to talk about it. When you initially say it, I'm not sure how you want me to talk about it, or where's the angle that you want me to answer on. So I'm
ask you some questions. Can I ask you some
Go
questions about
ask me
my
some
questions and see how you answer?
Yeah, so I can better understand what you mean.
So first question is easy. Do you believe in God?
I don't. I believe that there's a possibility that there can be a higher form of being, but I don't necessarily think that that God, what we know as God, necessarily exists. I don't need it for my belief system.
What is your belief system? And you can ask questions back at me. I don't think it should be like me grilling you, but like I have answers. I think about things.
Okay, well, let's go back. What's your view of God? Do you believe in God?
I mean, I think anything's possible. I don't believe in like God in the Jewish sense, like strictly, you know. I think that anything is completely possible, and I have all sorts of different theories. Sometimes I think about the simulation theory. Do you ever think about that one?
I studied philosophy, and we actually do the simulation question. It's actually just a question that comes up in philosophy. I don't really remember my answer, but I think it's very difficult to prove that you're not in a simulation. There's a whole essay I wrote about this. I wouldn't recommend anyone read it. But
wait a second. Should I just like read the definition of simulation theory real quick?
No, don't. No. It's super confusing.
Simulation. No. Here it is. I'm going to read it really quick off Google. The simulation hypothesis proposes that what humans experience the world is actually a simulated reality, such as a computer simulation in which humans themselves are constructs. There has been much debate on this topic, ranging from philosophical discourse to practical applications in computing. And I want to tie this to Judaism. I think that sometimes I think about this and I'm like, if we are a simulation and if I'm the main character in my simulation and there's some like nerd in a basement making this world, this very detailed world, it's interesting that they're like, let's make this guy Jeff from this really small but very important historical religion. And he's going to be born in this time where things are going pretty good. And then right when he reaches kind of like young middle age in his 30s, things start to feel really bad. That would be interesting for this story that we're telling. And they programmed us to be born into this world where my grandparents were in the Holocaust and we were scared. And then when we reach our 30s and I start to have kids of my own, it starts to become Holocausty. It's just really good storytelling. It's scary. There's an arc to this. And like if simulation theory is real and someone's simulating with me as the main character, it's really cool that they made this religion Judaism. And like anyways, thoughts on the story?
So Jeff, basically your life is like a mix between The Matrix and The Truman Show. I find that hard to believe. Both of them are good films, you know. I love The Matrix, my favorite film, but no, let's not go there. You'll go into some kind of existential loop that you'll never be able to get out of. I just wouldn't go there. The World is a Simulation is a really good film called The Matrix. I wouldn't
go there. You mean I shouldn't think too hard on this? You're saying?
Yeah, it doesn't help anyone to think that the world is a simulation. I'm just telling you from a philosophical point of view. It's just not worth it.
In your opinion. So
I know a lot of people in like the far right now talk about red pilling and blue pilling, which is again goes back to The Matrix, about like that the society controls them and everything's controlled. If you sniff around, you're like anti-Semitism.
Oh, so wait, hold on. You're saying that red pill, blue pill people, if you scratch the surface on just like what they're talking about, you'll get to anti-Semitism.
I mean, who controls the media? Who controls the world? There's a global conspiracy. Guess who's in charge of it? Oh, yes. Let me pick a group that's easy to attack. The Jews.
So it all comes back to that. So you're comparing my just like talking about simulation theory to a conspiracy theory.
I think the simulation theory is a fun philosophical debate. It makes a really good film. I love The Matrix. But if you take it to actually real life and beyond science fiction, then you'll eventually end up in anti-Semitism.
And Dor, I don't actually believe in this simulation theory as like dogma. I just think about it sometimes.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm just. Let me go back to your question. Let me find another way to answer it. So, you asked me if believe God exists. I think that a God of the Bible can exist. I don't personally believe in it. I don't require it to live my life, so therefore I don't need it.
So what do you believe?
I think that there could be. I think there could be higher beings. I just don't need a higher being or any of this spiritual force to explain my life or explain what's going on with me. So I don't need it. I don't need it in my. Again, this is getting very philosophical. My epistemology, I don't need it to explain and to dictate. Now, that's to do with God. Now, let's go back to Judaism. I think there's a lot of good in Judaism that pertains to daily life. For example, I think one of the greatest things in Judaism, which is really sad, is a Shiva, which, the 7 days after someone dies.
Sitting Shiva.
Yeah, sitting Shiva. And I think that's actually one of and the fact that in Judaism, and I know there's scientific reasons why people were buried initially, so the body doesn't decompose. But again, in Judaism, the body, you need to bury someone, straight away, and then you have the 7 days. And I think that from a psychological point of view, that's a genius way to handle bereavement. It's sort of saying, look, the person has died, which is really sad. Let God look after them. Now we need to look after the people that are left. I'm going to dedicate 7 days to that. And I think that's an amazing thing. It allows people to sort of to move on from the person that's died and concentrate on the people that are living. So I think that's
So Dor, what I took from that is that you really like the practical aspects of Judaism, but the spiritual aspect is not something that you think too hardly. Adhere to.
I like a lot of the practical aspects of Judaism. Obviously, I don't keep Shabbats. I don't keep that practical aspect. I like the community aspect of Judaism. I like the strength. I think that for me, I don't need the spirituality of God, me as a personal being, to live my life. I don't need it in when I make decisions, how I treat people, etc., etc. I love the practical stuff, the religious stuff, the community stuff of Judaism, the identity.
Yeah.
Israel. My wife obviously believes in God. She's semi-religious, so she likes it. That's great. I just don't personally require it to live my life, so I don't need it.
Can I take a guess about something?
Sure.
Can I guess that you're someone who believes that when you die, it just goes black and it turns off and there's nothing past that, right? Is that necessarily true?
Yes, because I don't have evidence to the contrary. I haven't. So the concept of heaven and the concept of an afterlife is actually very, very useful to believe in terms of bereavement, in terms of like what the importance of yourself in our life on
oh my
Earth.
God, Dor, you're so practical. Like, Dor, hold on here. All right, enough of this practicality. Oh, heaven, it's so useful. Oh my God, Dor.
I'm saying it's a useful device. I just haven't found use
There has been some evidence. There's been a lot of cases where people had near-death experiences and they see their life flash before their eyes, and it kind of leads you to believe that your body and your soul aren't connected, and your soul can go on to other. There are a lot of like practically claimed instances like that.
You misunderstand me. I don't deny that it's a possibility.
Okay.
It just can't affect my life on Earth, so to speak. Therefore I don't use it. I don't need it. As soon as I do need it, then I'll have it. But it doesn't mean that I deny that it exists. There's lots of things in the universe, like quantum mechanics, that could indicate scientific reasons for what happens afterwards and the continuation of human beings after the physical. So there's definitely room for it.
All right, you're making like if I was a cartoon and you just saw my face while you were talking about quantum, whatever, you would have seen both of my eyes spinning in different directions while you were talking about that. But when I'm listening to this later, I'll try to listen to it slowly and piece together what you're saying there. But you lost me, is what I'm saying.
Just don't need it I don't need it to live my life, but I don't deny that it's a possibility.
Has there ever been a moment where you felt like what's the most spiritual you've ever felt? What about this? Did you ever feel spiritual at the Western Wall, the Kotel?
I haven't been for a long time, so I want to go back. I don't remember. I thought I was more connected to the history of the Jewish people rather than spirituality, but I don't know. I don't remember. Ask me when we're there.
Okay. Oh, we should do an episode live from the Cotel.
Do you know what's really sad? What's really interesting? I'm coming out as like a really cold person because we ascribe, a lot of warmth, a lot of like...
You're not a cold person.
Ironically, humanity to like spiritualness and things like that. I'm not against those things. I just... when that guy collapsed,
I don't think you're a cold person. I think you're Mr. Logic, and this tracks with that. But no, you're not a cold person. You like sometimes you get a giggle fit when I sometimes make you laugh really hard, and you get this giggle fit. And you like turn red. I can't explain it, but like it's very warm, and you're just like a very logical.
I think
person.
I like to concentrate on the here and the now and the humanity here rather than the humanity. Yeah. In the next world.
As you know, I have like super potent ADD, and it's not like en vogue ADD. Like since childhood, I was on like pills growing up through school. Is like my parents like, what are we gonna do with this kid? I have very strong ADD. So synagogue was not well received with me and my like and my ADD. Like I just have memories of my dad pinching me in Beit Knesset, like with the rabbis talking. I get pinched by my dad because I'm not paying attention. And that's not spiritual to me. Like I couldn't connect. So I wonder if there's like Haredi people or ultra Orthodox people who have ADD. That must be a super big struggle. But moving on from that, my mom, I think she had an undiagnosed ADD, I think, and she would take me out of synagogue during the high holidays, and me and her would go into the woods behind my synagogue I grew up going to, and we would look for salamanders. And it was so fun. It was so magical. It was such a great tradition my mom did for me and we did together. Sometimes I like think about looking for salamanders on Yom Kippur as almost spiritual to me. And
you left the synagogue and then you went to look for lizard people. So
not lizard people, lizards. No, I think they're amphibians, but it doesn't matter. It's something spiritual to me about going into the woods and like lifting up logs, looking for life. Like that, it was so an amphibian life that's so different than my life. And to this day, just like treasure hunting or searching for things. Like maybe it's because of my ADD, I like to be doing two things at once, and I do better thinking when I'm searching. Anyways, there's something in there. I'm not sure.
I mean, I like the quote. I do better thinking when I'm searching. That's a nice quote.
All right, it's going on our Two Freaked Out Jews T-shirt merch. All right. Oh, do you have any questions for me? Do you have a question for me this week, Dor?
I do. We've touched on this before, but I want to go more deep into it. And from your perspective, you have young kids. How do you see their future in America?
I mean, sometimes it makes me very scared and keeps me up at night, and sometimes I think maybe this will... I mean, sometimes I think that what we're experiencing now will boil over into some sort of world war, and out the other end of the world war are everything could look completely different, and it will be a society that we just can't even predict. Sometimes I think about this. I think about it like, when you're really drunk and you have to vomit and you're like kind of scared to vomit and you have to like work up the courage to vomit. Has that ever happened to you, Dor?
Yeah. So what you're trying to say is that there's so much sort of like it's bad that you have to let out.
Yeah. Right now the world is like when you're sick and you have to vomit and you're working up. It's like you're working up the will to do the vomit, and that would be some sort of world war conflict, which is terrible to think about. But at the end of it, after the end of vomiting, sometimes you feel better.
Basically, you're saying things need to get worse to get better.
Yeah, it could be. It could be that, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, though, because... And we spoke about this last time. I think we had a really interesting conversation about what do we do about, the left-wing, extreme left-wing ideology and Gen Z. And in the time that we've spoken, this poll came out that said 51% of 18 to 24-year-olds, I think was the amount, or 50%, above 50% basically, said they support Hamas over Israel, or basically to solve the conflict, give Israel to Hamas, and of course we'll have a lovely utopian country.
It's just
now
is the person you're arguing with on Instagram and Gen Z? Because it sounds like it.
actually not, and that's the interesting thing about it. It's not just Gen Z. Let me say something, because we keep talking about Gen Z and sort of like it's like we vilify Gen Z, or we're vilifying the left or things like that.
Right.
And I think that that's actually what's led us partially down this route. I think that there's a lot of conversations happening, I think, in the diaspora community. Israel should have done more. Or how responsible is Israel for the diaspora? Israel has sort of not really come to the aid of the diaspora. I think most people would say that. Or not enough.
Well,
I think
Dor, but what do you... what could... In the dream scenario, what would Israel be doing to come to the aid of the diaspora? It sounds like...
Yeah. So first I would think, analyze what do I mean by they haven't come to the aid. So I think one of the examples that, especially the last 10 years of Israeli governments, they've really honed in on the Republican Party. Israel used to be a bipartisan issue, and very, very slowly in America. And Joe Biden from the Democrats has sort of been the beacon of hope. He's really been supportive of Israel, but
and maybe
I think
the last bastion of support for Israel from the left. Hopefully not. I think.
Well,
this.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly a debate. The Israel's actions basically to get support and the closeness that let's say Bibi had to Trump or whatever. They've gone towards the Republican Party and sort of left the Democrats. Now,
I think it was I think that's a huge mistake, and
it's a huge mistake, because if we go back to Gen Z, or we talk about the future of America in terms of intellectuals and the people that do go to university, the people that do lead stuff in terms of businesses and we know young people are more progressive. We know more young people vote Democrat. We know that. If you just leave them, have you just lost a generation?
Dor, like, part of the problem, what you're talking about, it has nothing to do with Israel. It's the fact that politics in America have become so polarized, and
in the West in general,
every issue is being pushed to the right and the left, and Israel got shoved to the right, embraced by Bibi Netanyahu, which I think is such a flop on his part. I know this guy who said that he really appreciates Bernie Sanders because he made the Democratic Party like further to the left, and I'm like, what are you talking about? That's a terrible... Why would you ever want the Democratic Party to go further to the left? We want things to stay centered on both parties for the good of a global order. Like, yes, there are like things that would be better if they were more conservative or more liberal, but like in general, we don't want whole parties moving to the left and to the right. It causes a crazy seesaw effect, and that's bad for Israel. That's bad for America. That's bad for Palestinians. That's bad for everybody. So what everyone needs to be doing is taking a breath and center yourself. I know I'm sounding a little smug here, but just do it, you dicks.
Well, no, I think you're 100% right. Most of the solutions to the world's problems come from the center. Why? Because we need compromise, and that's how you get to solutions. You have to be in the center.
This is a war of extremes. The person you're arguing with on Instagram, they don't realize it, but they're part of these extremes. The people who are out in the streets,
correct,
like screaming anti-Israel stuff, you're an extreme. And the people who are like, and the people within Israel being like, screw the whole Democratic Party, we're moving to the right. That's extreme. It's not helpful. The global... Oh no, my kids just got home. Yes, do you see what I'm saying? Centered. Hold on, I'm going to close this door.
So I'm going to go back to my question, Jeff. And my question was, are you concerned about the future of your kids in America?
I am. Yes, of course. I'm concerned about the future of everyone in America.
But let me say that where I've taken this from our discussion is that I do believe that there is, like we discussed in our last episode, there is definitely a new, unique problem coming from the extreme left that is threatening the Jewish diaspora, threatening Israel, therefore threatening our insurance policy, therefore will cause us issues if people ever kick us out. I think that what we've discussed here is that there is a general belief that Israeli policy partially abandoned the diaspora, like the investment into Hasbara, into foreign policy.
You're saying abandoned the diaspora by choosing partisan sides in American politics. So it abandoned the diaspora Jews in America because most Jews in America were Democrats.
So yeah, I think you're right. I shouldn't say that. I think abandon is a very strong word. I think, again, as I mentioned, Israel will always, it supports Jews around the world in terms of intelligence, in terms of bomb threats or kidnap threats or any terror attacks. It comes to the aid militarily. We saw this in Entebbe.
Sorry, it's interesting you bring up Entebbe because like the hero of Entebbe was Yoni Netanyahu, who died rescuing Jews out of the airport in Entebbe, and his brother Benjamin Netanyahu. I think when you're saying that Israel abandoned the diaspora, I think what you're saying is Benjamin Netanyahu abandoned the diaspora. He's the one who chose the partisan sides. He was in power for the last 10 years. This is part of his short-sightedness, part of why he's a quote-unquote excellent politician but not a good leader. That was what you said once.
Correct.
So, like,
yeah, I think that's what I mean by abandoned. And I think it's a very, it's an emotive word that I'm using.
I so agree with you. Like, I think it is. I think
that it's partly by going for going against bipartisanship. I think it's about, the lack of funds for Hasbara to help the Jews in the diaspora explain and deal with this new ideology coming to basically set up Jews as the oppressors, as quote unquote, as we said, white, as colonizers.
Right.
No, we haven't. The Jews haven't had help. The Jews in the diaspora haven't had help dealing with it. Now, I'm not saying that it's all Israel's responsibility. Jews in the diaspora also have to take that on board, and they have to. We have to find a new way to deal with it. And I think part of the way to deal with it is realize that this is happening, is to speak out, like you mentioned in the last episode that we were starting to speak out. It is to bring Israel back into the policy of
bipartisan territory.
It is to understand that because the narrative now has changed dramatically. Before we were talking about Oslo, we were talking about 1967 borders, two-state solution. You have people now, 18 to 24-year-olds, that are now talking about 1948 and a one-state solution. That's the new... We need to deal with that.
Dor, question. So clearly there's within universities. Let's just focus on universities. Clearly, in the most renowned universities, there's a systematic process that hires anti-West, anti-capitalist, anti-Israel, anti-America thought leaders who pass their views onto students who are adopting them. Right? Is that fair to say?
I think there's a lot of them, yes.
So if it's systematic, I would hope that some journalists can dig in and find out why these people are being hired in such mass. Like, I've seen some articles about, like, Qatari funds are going to these major universities. Is that the reason that these professors and these presidents of the universities are being hired? Can we dig in? Can we follow the money? I wish someone would do some investigative journalism and just pinpoint.
I think it's
who's at the top of this pyramid.
I think this is a multi-front war. I think you have to follow the money. You have to see if there's some kind of systematic thing. And we know that universities are, for obvious reasons, they've always been progressive liberal. The point is that nowadays progressive liberal means anti-West, therefore anti-Israel. We need to deal with that.
Benefit?
We need to deal with that. That's one part of the front. We need to deal with Israel coming back to bipartisanship. We need to deal with companies basically saying we don't tolerate this kind of level of discourse. We need to do what you were talking about last episode, which is putting your head up high and talking about Judaism, talking about our experiences in that diaspora. Not being silent.
Yes, I agree with all these things.
These are all part of the front. I'm still not I still haven't found that silver bullet. Maybe it doesn't exist. But we need something else that will do a dramatic change to what's happening. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think with this generation, by the way, we've lost them. So the new tactic,
there is a new generation already called Generation Alpha.
Yeah. So I honestly think that this, because I'm speaking to people on Instagram. I think Gen Z is finished. I think we, again, not all of Gen Z. There's lots of there's lots of good Gen Z.
The soldiers fighting in Israel right now are Gen Z.
Yeah, the soldiers in Israel, the soldiers that are doing amazing work in Gaza at the moment. Are Gen Z, and everyone thought, oh, they're not going to be able to do it. They're TikTok generation. They're doing an amazing job. So I don't want to say.
So you're saying there is room for redemption for Gen Z, and I think they can turn around.
I'm not against Gen Z.
Out of their hypnosis.
I think we're just saying Gen Z, but really what we're talking about is the extreme people that believe in extreme left. It's not Gen Z. We're using that as a catch-all term. Maybe we should stop. Maybe that's one of the things we should do. Is we should stop just going.
Well, that's the problem. There is no word for this opposition we're facing. It's people call them woke, and that's kind of cringy now. People have called them. There's a lot of words for it.
I think there is a lot of. I mean, we look at the numbers. There's a lot of 18, 24-year-olds, and we can see the numbers. So, I think those people are lost. I think we, as the Jewish diaspora and Israel, should start refocusing how we change the narrative going forward. These people are not going to be convinced. We need
Generation Alpha to come up and be sensible.
Exactly, because you've got in America, a couple of weeks ago, you had people on TikTok basically reading Letter to America by Osama bin Laden, saying, "Oh my God, he was so right."
Right.
I mean, at that point, you've lost people.
I have to stop you there. Dor, I have to stop you to say something. I have to make a point. Who would benefit from anti-West professors poisoning the minds of the youth? Who would benefit from this? The same people I hate. I'm putting my tinfoil hat on here, but it's not really. It's China. Of course, China would benefit from anti-West professors teaching the young generations of America. Of course, China would benefit from all of a sudden blasting out Osama bin Laden's letter to America on several different TikTok accounts at the same time.
I think first of all that TikTok is semi-organic. We don't know how much China actually manipulates it. We have no idea.
I would say it's very safe to assume the worst. Because
it's safe to assume the worst, but we don't know. What we do know is that in China, they have been briefing against Israel. That we do know. If it translates to TikTok.
And why? Because Israel represents Western values in the Middle East.
What you said about China, I think, is interesting. And if we go back to what I said about sort of the multi-front war approach that we need to deal with this extreme left ideology, is one of them you said is, raising our voices, being proud of being Jewish, and amplifying that. The other one is following the money and seeing why these lecturers are being brought to universities with one particular extreme opinion. The other one is
following the yen.
The other one is it's looking at how do we make Israel switch to being bipartisan again. But I think from the China perspective is really how do we separate obviously China and America are having sort of this clash of civilizations. How does Israel become bipartisan in that? It doesn't want to be part of this massive war between America and China. It doesn't really affect anything. So how do we change that perception, even in China, that it doesn't influence?
That's a tall order, Dor, because it is involved. It's involved because China is aligned with Russia, and Russia is aligned with Iran, and Iran's mortal enemy is Israel. So it's a tall order.
It's a tall order. America is still our most important ally, and the West is our most important ally. I'm just thinking that how do we change the narrative that it doesn't become that China doesn't have to use this tool to attack America, and is it because America's vulnerable on this, and we have to find a way to make America not vulnerable to this kind of attack?
Well,
I don't know yet.
America is very vulnerable.
No, not vulnerable on the Israel issue. I'm saying vulnerable on the Israel issue. I haven't got the solutions yet, but again, every time we discuss, this is a very difficult problem, and I don't think there's a silver bullet. I would like to find one.
All those things that you said, those 4 steps, might be moot if the world keeps heading towards a war, a world war on a giant scale.
I don't want to.
It just seems more likely.
let's not
manifest.
Yeah,
it.
let's not manifest a war to change people's opinions.
I don't want to, Dor. Just like have to be honest, that it does seem.
I get you,
likely.
and certainly the Gaza war in Israel now is going to change dramatically the Palestinians' trajectory and Israel's trajectory. So sometimes you do need a reset. Going back to what you said before, things need to get worse before they get better. I am hopeful though that will lead to a better outcome, but we can chat about it another time.
Oh, hooey. I wanted to get spiritual, but
normally I have a very strong opinions, and here I'm like bouncing between because I don't know what the solutions are.
That's fine. That's why it's like we're having like a jam session trying to figure it out.
I know. So I don't think this has been like a very. In a way, it's a helpful. It's probably why it's a helpful discussion, but I don't know if I've reached anywhere yet. So
listen. All right, all of this, there's a theme in this episode. We don't know, none of us know what death is. None of us know what spirituality is. And I'm talking about all humans. None of us know the answer or how things are going to be in this conflict. And we're nervous about that, and we don't know. But what we can do is, and it's not healthy, but we're doing it, is getting on Twitter, getting on Instagram, and just like zeroing in on someone and just like telling them how you feel. And that's why we're doing that. That's why we're trolling each other. We probably shouldn't be doing that, but it just feels like we're in control when we're battling with your random acquaintance from university, you know? But it's probably not helpful, so maybe I'm not going to go into stinky Twitter anymore. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I really have only one person that I do this with because I want to know what the opinions...
Is it the same person that you're talking?
It's the same person because I want to know what the opinions of the other side is. It's a bit like... I would have a better life if I just muted this person, but I'm going to answer back.
Okay. Clap back. All right, Dor. I think that's a wrap for today. Lila Tov, Dor.
Goodbye, Jeffrey.
My name's Jeff. I'm calling in from California.
My name's Dor, and I'm joining you from London.
Out of 16 million, we are 2.
2 freaked out Jews.